their immediate objective of winning political power, but the impact is going to have on their own families, the work that they do, and the country as a whole. And so I thank you for joining us this afternoon and look forward to working with you in this regard. Thank you.
Chair, it's always been insisted. I think one area, Madam, let me expose you, is how you want you want us to be able to investigate and prosecute. I think there are legal basis, but it's likely maybe, Madam, when you take over, you throw more light on those ones as you are a lawyer. So that element, I think we need to strengthen the collaboration within the agencies to deal with that. There are. And sometimes the media, I'm pleading with you. And I've said the same thing with our international partners. When this whole business started, and we said, in Ghana, we need to take the issue of disinformation seriously. I think our Western partner were saying, look, this is not, including the UK, when you meet them, no, this is just, in fact, they didn't want to even see that as a cybersecurity issue. Oh, this is just online abuse. But just a few weeks ago, I think some of you were following the development in the United Kingdom. There were routes, right, that were recorded. Are you reading that? Just BBC even reported. There was to help use and how to handle such information. But also the national security establishment, led by the national security, leading the campaign, see something, say something. That is equally important. We need to integrate this together, and the number to call, especially if we need driven established. This process and for we
You can call or send SMS to the hotline 292. You can send a WhatsApp message to 0501 603111 or report at csa.gov.gh or go on their website, www.csa.gov.gh/reports. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will take some remarks from our key stakeholders, starting with Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director of IDEC.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I was looking for where the stairs are, and I have long legs, so I decided to cut it short. But thank you very much for the opportunity, and good afternoon to all of you. I think I have a very short time, and what I'd like to start with is to remind us that in the Fourth Republic, the longest stable multi-party democracy, we have not experienced this 32 years before. But if you look closely, what you see is that every 16th year, we've had two now, presents unique challenges. And so you want to look at 2008 elections and compare it to what had happened in 2004, 2000, and go back and you see that the 16th year where our two duopolistic parties, as we call them, I don't think the minister agrees with me to call them duopolies, but you see how all the small parties are not seriously at the center of the game. We do have a real threat of violence, which violence, if it's not managed well, could also affect our democratic stability. And so there are unique ways in which we have to look at how do we handle the situation. And IDEC has been involved in this because in 2008 we have to be especially innovative in seeing how we could mobilize Ghanaians and tell the electorate, you don't have to resort to violence. Let's see how we consolidate our democracy. Where are the people who would speak and everybody would listen and restrain and talk to the army, talk to the police and all that. And we had to innovate ways of doing this by introducing mechanisms that we just invented. For example, we had to think through and say that what we were observing in 2008, we started talking about how two parties have become what we say, the major parties. Small parties didn't have a space. And they've all done 8 years. And to enter the 17th year, it was do or die, because the system was not designed in anticipation of two duopolies politically, and therefore did not have the institutional arrangements that could referee how they behave and so on and so forth. And it's quite threatening if you got close to that. They had their own, how would you call the vigilantes? They resorted to equipping them. They go on radio and they speak, and in our context now, I hear a lot about digital technology and all that, but really our people are still stuck to radio and the local language that is spoken. When I look at the digital situation and the new technological devices being used, it is true, but we must admit that Ghana is making progress. The percentages globally compared will put us well, but the reality of our situation today is that we are still making strides. The majority of the people speak local language, they listen to radio, and the other ones that could be incited to take risks. The educated ones are smart. If you want the university people to get into some of the situations, it's a quid pro quo. You can't get it for free. So we had to look at different ways in which we could get the EC to engage, bring the police to talk to people, get the radio stations to know that they can be held accountable, and we innovated different mechanisms of doing that. What it led us to then is that you could see how after 2008 elections, we entered a phase where we were beginning to look at the rise of our two parties as duopolies. And then we realized that we don't have, unlike football, we do not have referees to take care of these two giants. There's no framework for it at all. The state is law, but the state had overlooked this, and they came with we saw the violence, the foot soldiers initially we called them, and then they evolved steadily to become vigilantes, and then they began to have some, whether it's arms or catalysis or whatever. But the fact is, I like the digital focus, but our reality is still very much what it has been. The majority of the people are still radio-based, local language, and so on. And so when I looked at this, I then said maybe I'd like NCA to tell us about why we have so many radio stations, FM radio stations, in our context. Because the university graduates resort to the other tools easily, but they are not at the center of things. Local language is being spoken and their mobilization and all that. So I think for us, we want to present the empirical reality and say that, hey, I think we've been engaging the NCA, and I'm happy to see my brother Anochi, who sent me a nice message welcoming me here in the letter, and I like that because I've been hunting him. And I don't mean pray like, but I've been trying to get him to talk about this. So the first thing then is that for our democracy, if I told you what happened for our stability to get through to 2016, it's not a joke. It took the National Peace Council, it took the IGP, the police IGP, it took the Chief Justice to come up with tools they hadn't thought about initially, to be able to adjudicate, to be able to tell the public, the larger public, where they should go if there's trouble and so on. And those things were peculiar to our circumstances. And once we were able to get leaders of institutions to come and talk about how they would deal with violence and urging people not to resort to violence, but also believe that their needs will be met, it gave us a new situation. And if you heard, the Peace Council had been established, but the Peace Council was not equipped to handle the situations that emerged. And I think one of the interesting things that many of our people, one day, maybe when it's well written, would understand that the second round elections are most dangerous. And I don't hope we are having a second round to go to a third round, but they are most dangerous because the language, I can't see the NMC George Sapon here, but he would tell you the kind of language that came out across the country. You might think we were in Rwanda. That is how serious it was. But over time, we went to the third round, and that was much safer. So second round elections are dangerous, and we should keep that in mind. I don't know whether the digital technologies and so on would address this real threat about how local people are mobilized, how they see, each other not as my brother or something, but they think they must fight all out. And you need to find people who will talk to them and bring them. It's evolved from foot soldiers to armed vigilantes now, as we hear. And we have to deal with that. So I think that's a reality we must take into account. The innovations that came within this time then is that we also saw that the police service did not or was not ready to deal with the by-election violence, Etiwa, and then the language of our politics and campaigns, the insults and so all die be die, and how the other side too would come up with another slogan and so on. And radio was very crucial to mobilizing them. We've made progress getting into 2012. We saw that biometric register came in, digital technology was deployed and so on. But it took peace pacts to steer clear away from violence. And we are still in that phase. So the technology is important, but the historical and socioeconomic context and ethnicity, exploitation, and the people who get in are not like us, but they are mobilized by the parties. And what confronts you is that there's no regulation of our parties of this behavior. The EC is a different thing altogether. After elections, the EC's remit stops. And who regulates parties, whether it's their campaigns or annual conferences or policy issues and so on? We did not set up those issues. As we looked at this clearly, it became clear to us that the Fourth Republic, the framework within which political parties operate, truly were not designed with the requisite state institutional mechanisms, that which will regulate, that will create conducive conditions for our parties, even support them, given our history of coups and so on, to become nation builders as well as the development agents. And there were no institutions to handle them. We don't have the institutions still, but it's a struggle. And you begin to see that violence keeps recurring. I'm not sure, I think local radio stations are still the most effective tools they use to mobilize. And much as I like some of the digital tools, I still think that we should look seriously at how our FM radio stations, and I think the large number of it and the justification of it is what I would like to listen to when NCA responds. If you go through that and you come to 2016, you will find that around 2016 now, we also have the army coming in. Please, if you heard anything like calling for coup or something, it's not true. But I just pointed out that the point of entry of the army is so crucial and raises questions about the risks that we are facing in our democracy now. And those risks, whether we couldn't handle it differently. By the army, 2016, 2020, already 2024, they are talking. And we have two parties. We are told they all have their vigilantes armed. They study by Cape Coast University. We are trying to get the gentleman to give more details and maybe a lecture and so on. But he says that our two parties have vigilantes, some are armed, and so on and so forth. So on the one hand, we're doing well with the digital tools, and I think it's mostly educated people, the university people especially, who are unemployed and so on, they get into these things. But on the other hand, you have two worlds. Those who could be manipulated to fight it out and all that. So we need to see how to address these challenges. And we go to 2020 elections and you see what has happened. Also now we have to deal with the rule of law, accountability and all that. And it's a different kind of game. Can we address this only through cyber? I think the cyber security issues are extremely important, but we should also accept that our reality, the people who are mobilized, who are easily influenced, we have to find a way of bringing them in. Now, the third then point that I want to make is that for the elections ahead of us, if you look at Rwanda and you see how Rwanda went through its genocide and so on, Rwanda is not like Ghana. In fact, Rwanda sees Ghana as the model. And the number of Ghanaians who have built Rwanda post-genocide, you'd be amazed. I remember a meeting I attended once. Two people came, a lady and a man who came and said, it was lunchtime and they called me aside. That's the place you're always afraid if you are called quietly. And then he said, well, you are from Ghana, and he was interested in our education system. And I said, why? And he says, thank you. And he says that, the reason is that all of the UN institutions were led by Ghanaians. Women and men in the economy, the university had these people, the various departments, DFID, whatever, and they were bringing about change in Rwanda. So they were interested in our education. How did we produce this? So I had to say they wanted to have a discussion. They came and they said they were coming to Ghana. I believe they came, but still they have extremely good relations with Ghana, technically speaking. But I don't know much about how that impacts us to look at the recurring threat of violence and how we're going to deal with it in 2024 elections. I think to wrap it up, all that I'm trying to say is that digital technology is extremely important. How we extend it to those who are the praised, who are mobilized to threaten and so on and so forth is something that needs to be worked out, probably in collaboration with civil society organizations. But the situation we face now is one that says that you probably would believe in Ghanaian superstition when we tell you that the role that Cardinal Texan and the late Movi Wahab Adam played in moving us in 2008 from violence. It might not be scientific, but you would also see the hand of God and their belief in prayers, and they are not interested in taking any credit. I'd like us maybe at a certain stage to look at these two competing awareness of mobilizing our people, the use of radio, local radio, and I'm still worried about the number of radio stations which would address more local issues, okay, and the people who are mobilized in this case, whether they are meeting our violence and so on, than the digital. The digital people could be controlled quite effectively, but they are not the ones who are easily mobilized and incited. I think I'll end here because I have two ministers of state smiling at me, but I don't think it's a friendly smile. So I would.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akwete. That was a good one. We are constrained because we are live on TV, and in no time they will call you that they want to take us off. So it's my prayer that the remaining remarks can be made within 5 minutes each, so that we can invite our friends from the media to join the conversation. On that note, I would like to call upon Dr. Kojo Asante of CDD for his remarks.
Honorable Ministers, thank you for the opportunity for inviting me. I think when we talk about the issue of misinformation and disinformation, sometimes I think we have to put in the reality of our sort of recent developments and the way in which technology is sort of taking over our lives, and maybe put it in proper context so that sometimes we don't compartmentalize these challenges. For me, we live in society, but we also live in a democracy. The things we aspire as citizens in a society or in a democracy are really not different. You know, we want to be sort of good neighbors. We want to be civil to each other. We want security. We want peace. We want stability. We don't want to insult each other when we are talking. Like we are meeting today, if we're having a conversation, we will not be trading insults. It will be very uncomfortable if we're facing each other and we're just insulting each other. We will not be actually being violent to each other. We'll not be going around the place brawling. And somehow we feel that when we are online, all of those things are easy game. So, but these are values that gradually the digital space is testing all of us. That we have to, begin to reevaluate and reassess and begin to fashion out ways in which we can bring ourselves, to a certain core of ourselves. Because if we don't, human beings have a way of training themselves to sort of numb these kinds of traits, so that you become very comfortable. You can go online and be very, very nasty, and come home and go to church and be very pious, and you'll be a very good human being, and there'll be nothing wrong with you, right? And that's how a human being can behave. And you do it enough times, you become very, very comfortable with it. I think as we go into an election, these circumstances then intensify, and our passions run high. But these are the times that we even have to hold on to our values the more. What has changed with technology and with the consumption of information is that it's become more personalized. People consume information because they like somebody. The two things that is now being contested the most is truth and trust. So what I believe to be truthful is because of whether I like somebody or I believe somebody, or whether I trust an information is whether I believe somebody or I like somebody. And that becomes very, very difficult in a place where information is so decentralized and distilled. So many types of information that people are generating citizen information, all kinds of information. And Dr. Akwete, that's why it makes the gap between online and offline almost non-existent, because what happens online is taken offline as well. What happens offline is taken online, and there's this circulation that's going on. So if we don't return to those values that we would normally exhibit when we are in that public space in society, then we would struggle to deal with the problems of the digital space. And no matter what kinds of systems or mechanisms we put in place, when you see a deep fake and you are not applying the same ethics you would apply when you are offline, and because you think that it's okay in an online space, you would behave the same way that you would not normally behave in a public space. So you would just immediately believe it and even forward it, even though maybe you would check if it was in a public space. Say, I've heard this thing about this person, but I'm not quite sure, but let me check. But online, you immediately forward it. So I think for me, that's one big issue that we have to address. But that reality, I think, doesn't only exist for citizens. It also exists for policymakers and the state. Because in that same space, that same issue about citizens protesting, agitating, joking even about government, Ghanaians like that a lot, sort of reacting, giving feedback to government policies, that's also happening and mimicking online. How does government engage and respond to that activity that normally happened in the public space, now happening online, and generating its own challenges? How is that going to be now, I wouldn't say regulated, but even how government responds to it? It's also another area that we all have to try to deal with. And I think in all of this, for me, the key is basically what we are doing. Consultation, engagement. With the rapid way in which technology is changing, there's no blueprint for finding answers, particularly lasting solutions to any of these things. And it is consultation and also the willingness for everybody to comply and find a consensus as to the best way to deal with these issues. So the more we engage as stakeholders and work together, I think the best way in which will be able to confront this and have mechanisms for adapting to the changing technology that is coming. For us at CDD, we're very much aware of this because for us, technology itself is challenging democracy at its core. And we need to understand the ways in which we can harness its benefits, but also confront its disadvantages. It's the reason why we are trying to learn also from what others are doing. So next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, together with the European think tank group, Overseas Development Institute, we are hosting a meeting of experts on AI, cybersecurity and elections here in Accra. Honorable Minister will be there, DG will be there, because Europe is doing, I think Europe has gone further in terms of looking at how to regulate some of these issues, and there's a lot to learn from what Europe is doing. But for elections, we did something in 2020 that I think was very, very helpful. We tried to create a net around information dissemination using election observers, fact checkers, media support groups, media houses, mostly to do pre-banking and fact checking. And I think that if we do the same, even more in a broader scale with other stakeholders, including regulatory bodies, we should be able to sort of reduce the circulation, also with the platform owners, the Facebook and so on. But as you've said, there are places that we are still struggling to get to, like the WhatsApps and other places. But I think that helps. It helps in reducing the way in which the information gets blown up. So I think there are ways in which we can help during the elections. But I think for citizens, this is a very, very challenging. I worry for a lot of citizens who are sitting at home just receiving information and trying to decipher what is truth and what is not. But as much as possible, the posture to take is that don't believe anything until you can verify it. And take your trusted sources from now. Build a relationship with the trusted sources so that come election time, you know that you are receiving it from a group that you can trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asante. On that note, I would like to invite the General Secretary of the Ghana Journalists Association, Mr. Edmond Kofi Eboa, for his remarks.
I don't hold a PhD, but I think I can match Dr. Akwete in terms of long legs. So I had to use the shortcut. Minister of Information, Honorable Fatimatu Abubakar, Minister of Communication and Digitalization, Honorable Esla Owusu Ekufo, Director General of the Cybersecurity Authority, Dr. Albert Entry Boesiakun, distinguished invited guests, colleague media practitioners, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the Ghana Journalists Association, and I am happy that the organizers of this important program have deemed it fit to invite the GJA to be part of this national endeavor. Honorable Chair, the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a laudable initiative by the Cybersecurity Authority as it affords the nation the opportunity to focus on and engage a critical issue that has enormous national security implications. Cybersecurity has become a national security imperative, given the fast spread of misinformation and disinformation. Therefore, any effort to raise awareness and build the capacity of citizens to detect, prevent, and mitigate the spread of misinformation and disinformation, such as the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month seeks to achieve, is commendable and worth supporting. Honorable Chair, the theme for this year's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, scheduled for October, and I must say October is a very important month. That is the month in which I was born. It is a month we celebrate breast cancer awareness, and it is a month we celebrate World Food Day, all of which have something to do with life. So the theme for this year's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is combating misinformation and disinformation in a digitally resilient democracy, our collective responsibility. Indeed, the theme is very relevant in our present circumstances as the nation heads towards election 2024. There have been many instances of misinformation and disinformation, particularly by political actors and the media in the electioneering. This can mislead the electorate in their judgment and choice, thereby distorting election outcomes. Honorable Chair, the media, particularly social media, have been the major conduit for the spread of misinformation and disinformation. It is reasonable to hold, therefore, that the media have a critical role to play in combating that menace. In that regard, the GJA wishes to call on the media to join forces with the Cybersecurity Authority during this year's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month to help build the capacity of the citizens so that they will be able to address the menace of misinformation and disinformation. Beyond the awareness month, the media must make it a cardinal duty to curb misinformation and disinformation at all times, especially in the 2024 electioneering. We must endeavor to verify our information before publishing same. Inasmuch as speed is good in journalism, we must never lose consciousness of the fact that accuracy overrides speed, and that it is destructive rather than productive to rush and crash. Furthermore, we urge the media to not to give their platforms to political actors and others to spread misinformation and disinformation. Honorable Chair, while highlighting the role of the media in combating misinformation and disinformation, it is equally necessary to call on political actors in particular and the general public to refrain from such negative enterprise. As the theme for this year's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month rightly dictates, combating misinformation and disinformation is a collective responsibility. So we all have to put our hands on deck to arrest this menace. Honorable Chair, on this clarion call, I wish to thank you for the opportunity and your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. On that note, we have 2 brief speeches or statements before we move to the Q&A session. So I would like to invite Brigadier General Dr. Tembata Bana, Director, National Counter-terrorism Fusion Center, JCC. Doctor.
Honorable Ministers, I would just make a few comments. I believe a lot has been said. So mine is just a word of gratitude. Cyber resources and services, the point has been made, are indispensable for all of us, for all institutions today. However, the threats are real. They are not an exaggeration, as presented by the earlier speakers, or wherever you find people talk about the cyber threats. The security landscape touched on by Dr. and a few others, including the Honorable Minister for Communication, is not getting better or any better in the West African sub-region. And we have said it many a time that Ghana is not immune from those threats that surround us. The deviants or the miscreants we have around, making the sub-region unsafe, also use cyber resources. And therefore, having a month or dedicating a month for cyber awareness for our citizens and our institutions is just the least we can do. So we would like to thank our Honorable Minister for her leadership, for the growth of the sector, and most especially for the space given the Cybersecurity Authority to develop innovative ways of securing the domain. We are also grateful to our Director General for his passion and direction for the work of the Cybersecurity Authority. His knack for perfection and excellence is just so infectious and admirable. In actual fact, his immediate staff should be the envy of a good number of us. So staff, you are lucky to have Doc for a DJ. To our host minister, we want to say thank you for having us once again and providing us with all these platforms. We hope next time you come around again, you will readily open your doors to us. So we'd like to make an appeal. The Joint Cyber Security Committee would like to make an appeal to everybody. Mention has been made of the C something short code, that is 999. For generic security threats, when you feel that the security or the peace of your immediate environment is threatened, you call 999 and the Ministry of National Security would get to work and then bring you the respite and succor you deserve as a citizen. If it's a cyber-related threat and you identify it as such, you call 292 and the Cybersecurity Authority would come to your aid. If you are in doubt, you can call 999 and we will redirect your request to the appropriate quarter. So let's all embrace next month, the special month as mentioned by the General Secretary of the Ghana Journalists Association. I think I was also born in that month. Let's embrace it for mutual benefits. Let's embrace it to ensure that at least the cyber domain remains a secure one and that we will continue to enjoy the services that we derive from it for our collective advancement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brigadier General. On that note, we will take the final statement from Kodeo, represented by Sheikh Arimeya Oshaibu. Sheikh, if you are here.
The Honorable Minister for Communication and Digitalization, my very good sister, we've not seen ourselves for a long time, and Ajah Fatima, Minister of Information, all protocols observed. I'm here to speak on behalf of Mrs. Elizabeth Villas, who has not been able to come because of circumstances surrounding her. And as a member of the Kodeo board, I was asked to come and just represent her. I'm very aware of the time, and so therefore let me just make some brief remarks, but probably just to illustrate how the dangers of what we are talking about is from a very personal perspective. 2 years ago, the Eid al-Fitr celebration, I was instructed by the Chief Imam in his own presence to announce our celebration of the Eid. It was supposed to be on a Tuesday, but a section of the Muslim community had decided to pray on Monday. On that Monday, I had gone to one of the suburbs around Nima to have my hair cut nicely because of the coming celebration. I drove in my car. I don't know where somebody found me, where somebody saw me. A section was praying on the side of the road. I went to have my haircut in the evening. I was relaxed with my wife in the house, sharing the normal conversation. Then she went on her, she's very active on the Facebook. Then she saw me. When she saw me, then she said, hey, who has brought you here? Then she wrote the comments, and it announced that Sheikh Armiao, who announced that we will pray on Tuesday, had gone to pray on Monday with a section. And it went far. And the comments that were coming, very, very injurious, very, very threatening. That's a hypocrite. A hypocrite. And it went on until my wife resisted my effort to restrain her that, no, you just leave it, let it go. And she insisted no. So she went just straight to that same platform and then indicated that my husband, it is not true, that. Then the other responses began coming. And this is from my personal story to tell you how dangerous the issue we are dealing with. And secondly, misinformation and disinformation. I think probably from the way we are even handling it, it's like something innocuous. But I think we need to associate it with the vice and the bad intention that brings up that, so the public will understand. Now, what is the intention of the person who concocts the story, either to misinform or to disinform, and to break down a country that has been known for its peace for all this time? And they are using and the hate speech that are being used, that stokes the embers of violence that we foresee as this year's election approaches. The political parties are using it effectively. They are using it effectively because the crucial nature of this year's election for them is something that they cannot joke with. As one party wants to retain political authority for more than 8 years, meaning that the opposition will have to remain in 12 years in opposition, and that's what they are also resisting. And that's how crucial it is. And so every means, just this morning I was on YouTube, and I saw how somebody on a certain radio station said this year's election is a do or die affair. And it's going. It's going. And that's how threatening it is. to our democracy, if we really want to mature our democracy, then the issue of peace and how collectively we are concerned about it. How do we get this message to really those who are now being deployed? In fact, sometimes they are just few people in a room that have been deployed. They are just a small group in a room, but knowing how swift the social media goes. They use it, they insult you, they can intimidate you, they can attack you, silence you, and attempt to silence you. Even those of us who come within the public space to attempt to maybe do the right thing, you can also become a subject of such attacks. So it is not for the media alone, not for the politicians, but for the generality of society. It's a terrible thing. And so it's vice, it's vicious, it's vile. We must characterize it in that way. And I like Kojo's point. That's why our values comes in. These are young people who are growing, also wanting to become presidents and prime ministers. They want to become MPs in future. And now on falsehood. So that's how terrible the whole thing is. This misinformation. And it's evasive, very pervasive, going around, and we are not conscious about what it means to the values that underpins our principle, even take political office and to do something for our country. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Sheikh, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to invite our friends from the media to join in the conversation. But before then, permit me to acknowledge some dignitaries who joined us this afternoon. We have with us Honorable Catherine Afeku, former Minister for Tourism, former Member of Parliament for Ivalu, Ajomoro Jira. We also have with us Professor Boateng Owona Ajeman, Board Member of Cybersecurity Authority. Also from the board is Madam Esther Jifa Ofori. We acknowledge your presence. We are also joined by Nana Kofi Asafu Edu, Executive Director of JDNR and also a JCC member. We also have with us from the Data Protection Commission, Ms. Natasha Hammond. Thank you all for joining us. And once again, I would like to acknowledge our media partners taking this session live, GTV, and on Facebook at Ministry of Information, Think News Online, and Kofigo Media. Thank you so much. So on that note, if you have a question, this is the best time to ask. If you see your hand, they will bring the microphone to you. You mention your name and affiliation and proceed to ask your question.
Good afternoon. Your friend Kofi Chairman, Semi-Edmo Kofigo Media. Honorable Minister, this is an election year. We both say political opponents, and I say both sides. I'm hand on social media and use flyers of media houses. A BO CTF, a BO TV3. Later, I remember say fake news. And I'll call tricksters on SFNX now. Almost about 10 accounts. A nipa back when we create different accounts. Your IPA will be a issue. Instead, me tracy IP no near Munipa or criticize account or publishing fake news na. And any punishment no. And our last one, EC 2016, opponent of the NDC for say will be hacking on my system no. 2024 election more of digitalization AI aba. And then assurance and here was a EC opponent in my obi make say your hacking system after results beba. Ya go ka say a hack system into the results in your fair medasi.
Thank you so much for the question. John.
Thank you. My name is John Awuni. I represent Kesvin Television. My first question is, what metrics can be used to measure the impact of misinformation and disinformation on these democratic processes, and how can we progress in combating it? That's the first question. But the second question is, as recent as last month, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete made a comment about the supposedly violent nature this election will go, and that if it does go like that, there will be a military coup d'etat, and the army issued a press release. As he is here, maybe he can give us further particulars, whether it was disinformation or misinformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. Yes.
I want to find out from my name is Anapoku from Daily Research. Sorry, I want to find out from the NCA head or whoever is here. there was an attempt to, as it were, use some device to curtail some provocative and hate speech on the radio, so that if a person speaks or starts speaking and you know that it's not going to end up well, you punch it off. I don't know what has happened to that device. Is it in place? And the radio stations are intentionally refusing to use it, or it is not yet in place. And Dr. Kote, it is not only radio that uses that. If you go to TikTok, they speak local language. They do all kinds of things in local language, not only the radio. So they're online too, they are doing all sorts of things over there. So you can spark off. And the GJ, you hear on air some people making very derogatory and denigrating statements against certain people in authority or in society in this country. Some of them come out boldly to insult and threaten people. And yet we don't see what the GJ do about it. I don't know whether you don't have the power. Can't you do it, or another media commission or whatever? Because it is very nauseating. People insult people nakedly, and nothing is happening to them, and they go on doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take 2 more questions if there are any hands. But if there are none, I take that to be the last question. Okay. That's good. It means the message went down very well. Honorable Minister, if you have any comments on the above, or DG, we'll take yours before we go to our stakeholders.
Thank you very much. I don't even know where to start from. But yes, I agree that radio still forms a large part of the medium through which information is disseminated. But increasingly, we're having even the radio stations take their content from social media to inform the discussions that they make. So we need to have this conversation as a matter of urgency and see that the anonymity these social media platforms provide, which emboldens people to do all manner of things that they wouldn't dare do in person, is a matter that we need to confront and address. And we are all at risk. I've lost track of the number of times that I've been a victim of some intemperate language, let me put it mildly, from somebody on social media. But I say I have a thick skin. It's not everybody who has a thick skin. And even for some of us, it does get to you. So we need to widen the conversation. And so it's great that suggestions have come that the NCA is not here, by the way, so they cannot respond to those questions. But I think that the manner in which our show hosts also moderate these matters, issues which come up, is something that probably the Minister for Information would be able to speak to. We have work to do, and there are no answers. We've seen it happening in other parts of the world who are more advanced than we are. And so we need to craft the mechanisms based on our own peculiar circumstances, which aren't too different from what they're going through, to protect ourselves from the scourge that we have all identified. And no one institution can do it alone. And so it's great that at least we've started this collaborative effort, and I hope that we will deepen it. I'll leave the rest of the answers to the Cybersecurity Authority to attempt after, well, to answer, not to attempt, after these brief remarks of mine.
Honorable Information Minister, thank you for the reminder. I think from our standpoint, with respect to the security of the electoral management body, which is the EC, we're working with them. And not just because of the elections. It's one of the institutions that has been designated as a critical information infrastructure. The law, Section 35 of the Cybersecurity Act, mandate the authority to work with institutions whose critical dependency on digital services. So we're working on that. But of course, I think because we are in a very heightened state, therefore we have scaled up our assurance measures to ensure that the system that they're using to organize elections are quite secure. But of course, the human factor element is also important, and that is why the awareness creation. Doc, Idek, I think your perspective was excellent. I like the fact that you still telling us that, look, the traditional means by which our citizens can be mobilized for a destabilizing act is still present. I thank you for the reminder. And because of that, actually the minister has suggested to us that we should look at a kind of regional forum. It is just a question of the threat landscape expanding. So the traditional mechanisms are there, but then you have the digital platform. And in fact, I've gone to villages where the BBCs, people 70, 60, but once they have the smartphone, they are basically the biggest consumers of what? Fake news or misinformation. TikTok is one of them. And it's not just election, fake medicine and others. They are consuming them. They haven't gone to school. In fact, they haven't completed SHS, but they are still consuming. But again, the most important thing is how do we deal with this threat from the multiple sources? And therefore, look, I think per your recommendation, we're likely to bring you on board the Journalists Association so that we can have regional forums for the media houses. I think it's something that Minister has given some indication that we should be doing so that we can really balance the areas that we need to look at it, targeting those who are using the digital devices, but at the same time making sure that the threat emanating from the traditional sources are also addressed. So I really thank you for that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister and DG. There were a few questions, one from Nana Poku on monitoring radio and also TV, and I just wanted to share some insight as to the kind of work we've been doing together with the NCA and NMC. As you may be aware, first of all, we believe that among the strategies that we can use to fight misinformation and disinformation, one, legislation, two, media literacy, three, establishing protocols for reporting misinformation and disinformation, four, enhancing ethics and professionalism in journalism practice, five, reviewing collaboration with technology platforms, and also strengthening fact-checking mechanisms. So far, if you go to the NCA building at airport, there is a whole monitoring department that has staff of NCA and also personnel from NMC who have been deployed just to check egregious contents. When they get they pick from the frequencies and also the TV screens, they prepare daily reports which are then sent to the National Media Commission. The National Media Commission, by constitution, has the mandate to regulate content and make sure we are churning out content on TV, radio, and media platforms that do not contradict our constitution or our morals as a country. So we've been working seriously on that. When the National Media Commission receives such reports, they constitute panels and invite the media houses to come and respond. There is also another leg where you are able to petition the NMC directly. If you saw something on a platform and you can adduce evidence and attach as an exhibit to your petition, the National Media Commission will be mandated to invite the said radio or TV station to respond to the petition. Over the period, what we've tried to do is to encourage a lot of civil resolution rather than resorting to some provisions in our Criminal Offences Act and the Electronic Communications Act. and other legislations that are more punitive in nature. But there are instances that they are not avoidable. You realize that the implications of such misinformation and disinformation is huge. And if there is nothing like deterrence, then people will resort to it. One important development within the space also has to do with the number of legislations that have come up over the years. We used not to have Cybersecurity Authority. Now there is an act that has established the authority and given them the power to work. We used not to have an RTI Act. But since 2020, the RTI Act of 2019 has been enforced. I know a lot of media houses that will write for anything, request that a public institution answers. And sometimes sitting here, the requests keep coming. Sometimes the kind of data that they are asking from some institutions are so huge. But we still encourage them to request, because we envisage a situation whereby, because of lack of access to facts, people will resort to speculations and all sorts of misinformation. So with the implementation of the RTI Act, you have an alternative. You have a legitimate means to access facts. Over the period too, we've been engaging the app developers, TikTok, Facebook. We've had at least 3 meetings with Facebook so far. This year, they were even planning for us to organize a workshop for all the bloggers and the New Media Association. We've done a joint virtual meeting together and hoping to mobilize the resources for us to introduce them to some tools. We also encourage all those institutions to make sure when people file reports, they act upon them. They also face some challenges. For instance, if you churn out a content that is bad in English on Facebook or YouTube, they easily identify it and resolve it. But most of the content are in Chi. And you realize that that has also become a barrier. I check TikTok, I check Facebook, I check YouTube. If you look at the monitoring systems, they have the tools, but because of the language barrier, now people actually text comments in Chi and in Hausa and in languages that the algorithm may not pick, because they know there are certain words, if you use them in your content, they will be restricted. So you will see a whole thread and they are speaking, we Ghanaians understand, but the AI doesn't. And that is also one challenge that we have in Africa. I remember a few months ago, somewhere May 2024, I joined the finance minister to the IMF spring meetings and joined a session, ministerial conclave on human development. One of the issues that they raised has to do with lack of facts or content for AI for Africa. It is more likely that you type something about Ghana, Burundi, Congo, South Africa, Nigeria, and AI will give you wrong answers, because that is the data available to the AI. But when you go to other jurisdictions where they address systems, where their data, banking data, all forms of data are available, the AI will be able to predict the correct answers. So we all as citizens have the responsibility as gatekeepers to respond in a way that people will not benefit from churning out misinformation and disinformation. That is why I'm also excited to announce that already we have a draft broadcasting bill before Cabinet. We also have a national strategy and action plan to combat misinformation and disinformation also before Cabinet. And we believe that that policy and also that legislation, if by the grace of God it's able to pass in the future, will go a long way to help with regulation within the space. I must also commend the Ghanaian bloggers, the New Media Association, the Bloggers Association, without inducement or intimidation. They themselves have become concerned and have raised the issue about regulation within the space. So they reached out to us that we want the space regulated. That is why we've put ourselves together in association, so that we can get the membership to do the right thing. So these are some positive developments within the space, and as we dialogue, we pick it to those who have authority to influence policy and make sure we keep the Ghanaian media space safe. I thank you for your attention. Dr. Akwete, you would like to respond to any of the questions? Or if any of our stakeholders would like to respond to any of the questions. GJ, Mr. Ebwa. Okay.
Thank you very much. There was a question on what DJ is doing about the use of insulting language. We have been minded in our communications, whether it's a press statement or press conference, to always stress the point that freedom goes with responsibility. So every now and then we keep reminding our rank and file that in as much as we need to enjoy our freedom, we also have a duty. And we have been working with other partners, GIBA, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, Primpac, and the New Media Association, to address some of these things. And if you may recall, quite recently we had addressed one such concern, which had to do with Captain Smart, and we felt that some use of language he had been using was not proper. And so we have been doing this. My personal view, and I've tried to stress this time and again, that it is a collective responsibility, as the Cybersecurity Awareness Month theme says. So we should not only be looking at somebody to be doing anything. You may also ask yourself, what is your role? And I am thinking that if we all decide that this radio station is not doing things professionally, or this newspaper is not doing things professionally, and we stop patronizing them, they will shut up. But we sometimes are hypocrites. We complain, but we are the very people who go behind and be patronizing them. And once they are seeing the traffic coming, they think they are doing something good. So it is for us, the audience, to decide that this is not good for us, and so we are not going to encourage it. But I also think that a bigger conversation we should be having around this issue is the ownership of radio and television stations. Because if the owners are responsible, they will not be allowing such things to happen. And I think it's about time we had that conversation. I like to remind owners that we should always take a cue from the Muntie 3 contempt of case ruling. The Supreme Court had good reason to stretch the long arm of the law to cover the directors of the radio station cited for contempt. They may be sleeping at the time the program was ongoing. So the owners should also be mindful that they are responsible, and they will be held accountable for what they refuse to do in terms of asking their employees to be responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ebwa. That brings us to the end of the Q&A session. So we will move to conduct the official launch. I would like to invite the Honorable Minister for Communications and Digitalization and all our speakers. Yes, please. So, all our speakers. Yes, please.
Okay. Ubia besumbi. Ubia
in the middle. Go to sex.
So you have symmetry.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it gives us all great pleasure to declare the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month duly launched. Thank you very much.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's event. I thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For those watching from home, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.